Hi everyone, today I'm going to share some Christmas cards ideas, and I'm doing a voiceover today because I got a new microphone and it's I need to get used to it. So basically here I'm showing you where I got the idea for the Christmas baubles. So I've been doing some swatches from leftover watercolors, and then I went over them and created these flowers. I added the details in the centers of the flowers, and that way it's a creative way to use up the swatches and the leftover paint. So here I'm showing you a colorful page, and when I turn it upside down it actually looks like Christmas baubles because I added some gold details in the centers and they look very festive, so that's where the idea came from. And I will do a similar thing, just doing one bauble, and instead of the petals and the leaves I will put some ribbons on. So here is a very basic card stock, and these are 50 white cards with envelopes included, and that's what I will use. They're already prepared so that you can easily bend them when you're ready to create your card. And in terms of paper, I will use this lovely 320 GSM handmade paper. It's by Caddy Papers, and it's a square of 21 centimeters. And the paper is great because the texture is lovely for watercolors and I love it. So I will use this square and basically create 4 cards out of it. So I ripped the sheet of this paper into 2 halves. So I just shown you one half right there, and then I will basically rip smaller squares from that strip to go into the cardstock. So here I ended up with that smaller square of paper, and it is still a little bit big, so if you basically rip that long strip of paper into 2, you would end up with 2 squares, and then I needed to make it smaller. So here are 10 squares, which they're not squares, they're more rectangular, but they're close to a square, and the small piece of paper above that you can see, that's just the paper I kept for swatches if I needed to try watercolor. So to create this watercolor Christmas cards, I will use 2 things. Oh, I'm showing you the converter that finally arrived today, so I'm really excited. It's the converter for this platinum carbon ink fountain pen in extra fine. So I'm going to use 2 things. I'm going to use the ink, obviously, and I love it because it's waterproof. So if you give it a few minutes or set it with a heat gun, then you're absolutely fine to go over with watercolors, just not straight away. And here, and then later on I will use watercolors. So I'm starting by just drawing a rough circle. It doesn't have to be straight. Actually, I find the look of it more appealing when it's a little bit more wonky. It goes with the style. Here I'm adding that little metal part that holds the bauble, and you can then slide the ribbon through that little piece. And here I'm proceeding to paint the ribbons, and I could leave it, or you can leave it if you want, just as it is like that, quite simplistic. But I decided to add some ribbons and make it a little bit more festive in the end, which you'll see in a bit. But In terms of the actual bauble, the design of it is going to be this classic candy stripe kind of look, and I'm just drawing lines, as you can see, trying to go wonky and not have straight lines. And I like to double the lines just to make it a little bit more sketchy. And that's the first design of the bauble. So here I will show you how to create ribbons, and basically you start with this little loop and you repeat it on the other side, and then just 2 loose lines to suggest the ribbon hanging off, like so. And it's very simple, but it does add a bit more of a festive kind of look to it, and yeah, it looks quite pretty, I think. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other cards now. So here's a little speed up version for you. And this one I decided to make a polka dot, and the third design will be a basic one with no patterns in there. And that will allow me to use the watercolor and really play with watercolors, kind of create blooms and puddles and all of that. And so here are the 3 designs that I will use throughout these 10 Christmas cards. They're quite simple and they're really easy, but they will look lovely. So here I have chosen Schminke Horadam watercolors because they're lovely for that watercolor effect. If you would want something a bit more brighter, then you'd need to pick a brighter watercolor like Magella Mission Gold or St. Petersburg White Nights, or others that you prefer. But I would go with Schminke purely because of the watercolor effect. I want these sketches or these illustrations to have that watercolor look to them. So that's why I am going to keep Schminke. So the brush that I'm using here is the new brush that I got recently, and I really like it because it holds a nice amount of water and it's really fun to paint with. So this is the Quill brush from Jackson's, and the size is 10-0, so it's a perfect size for this type of illustration. And what it does, it gives me the opportunity to be detailed or do a nice wash of color with one brush, just one brush, and I don't need to interchange anything. I will change to another brush later on, but that's because I wanted to use a separate brush for the metallics and not this one, so it's not for the detail purpose. So here I started with the Perylene Green, which I really like. Actually, I lately have been using this watercolor not just for florals but also for figure illustrations, and I really like it, especially with a yellow color like transparent gold or the quinacridone gold hue. They mix beautifully together and they make lovely greens, very attractive greens. So I'm doing the candy stripe by interchanging this green, the darker color, with a lighter color that you will see in a bit. And I will also focus on creating a shadow on the left, so the light source will be coming from the right, and so the bubbles will be lighter on the right and darker on the left, and that just gives them more dimension, and also apart from the dimension it also gives them a more realistic kind of look, and it just looks nicer. Just a little touch makes a big difference. So here I'm going into the quinacridone gold hue, and you will see I'll make sure to touch the perylene green there to make the colors flow together and create lovely watercolor effects. I'm making sure I'm leaving white spaces because I want there to be highlights, natural highlights that I don't need to add with ink or gel pens later, and that also gives them a texture which I quite like. So as you can see, the bauble is looking darker on the left and lighter on the right. And to emphasize that, I'm just going to darken up the yellow, the other yellows, and then pick up the color here from the right side of the bauble, once again to suggest a lighter color. So here I'm going for the second color option, and that is going to be the indigo blue, which is a lovely blue color with a brilliant purple. And here I'm doing transparent yellow with also brilliant purple. It mixes really beautifully and creates a lovely orangey kind of mixes. So here is the polka dot design for the baubles, which is the second design, and I'm going to do the exactly the same color scheme that I've done on the previous three. So here I'm going to repeat those colors, very simple, keeping two colors for every bauble. So I'm going again in with the perylene green for the main color of the bauble, and then quite sort of loosely adding the quinacridone gold hue, and then indigo again, and the brilliant purple again. As you can see, keeping it super loosely because the colors will flow into one another and create a pretty watercolor effect. And here is again brilliant purple with the transparent yellow. And here are just the basic baubles, and I chose 4 colors out of the 5. So the first one was the indigo, second one is the brilliant purple, third one is the perylene green, and finally for the yellow I'm going for the transparent yellow, which is a beautiful color, again keeping the darkest on the left and the lightest on the right. So here are the finished baubles, and now to the I'm moving on to the fun part of it, which is adding the gold elements. So I decided to use the Arabic gold because it's the most shimmery out of these golds, and it's the most kind of vivid gold, and it would look lovely with this color scheme that I picked. If you want a more natural gold, I would recommend the first one, which is the Tibet gold, and that would be a more natural looking gold if that's the effect you desire. So here I'm going to switch to the round brush from Princeton, and this is the size 3, so it's great for detailing, but that's just because I want to keep a different brush for the gold in case I wanted to go back to the other brush later on. So quite simply just adding the gold. Just be aware that this gold is super pigmented, so don't go over the lines that you don't want to cover if you want those lines to be visible. So here I decided to add the polka dots to the simple looking baubles, just to create a little bit more of the festivity, and that makes them look so much better immediately. And having looked at my polka dot ornaments, compared now to the other two, something was missing there, and I decided to add these little flower details inside the polka dots, and I think it looks a lot better, and I prefer it that way, but you can either leave this part or add it. It's up to you what you prefer. So that's what I have done, just little daisies, and it was quite easy really. So these are the 10 cards, and I'm going to show you what they look like. So these were super easy to make, and I really enjoyed making them. And here are two different options for the cards. I used my ATG gun to glue the watercolor paper onto the cardstock, and then I have drawn a little frame with that same ink fountain pen to create some space for the Merry Christmas. And here, this is the second one that I prefer actually, I drawn a frame on the inside of the card all the way, and then put Merry Christmas underneath. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. See you soon.